Okay guys, hope you're going to hold it still, getting plenty of revision in, also plenty of sleep and fun of course. Some questions then to have a go at. I'll just show you the questions so you can start the video and have a go at them first, and then obviously you can scroll through and see any answers, etc., and get any help that you may need. Okay, so here's a question on finding missing angles. And there's going to be a question on class intervals and frequencies, calculating some statistics from it. There's a vectors question, looking at proof. And there's a ratio question. We know there's going to be ratios in your exam. It's quite a heavy topic now, so it's worth practicing those. And then we've got a solve with fractions involved, worth a lot of marks, so a little bit of work to do on this one. Okay, so let's get back to the first one. Let's be getting on with some answers. Okay, so this question talks about this shape being a parallelogram. It doesn't say anything about given reasons, so we can just go through adding on information as we can see it on the picture until we can find out the answer that they actually wanted. So we can see some dashes on here, which is telling us that these two lengths are identical, therefore this triangle is isosceles, so straight away we could be putting 51 degrees there, and if we know those two are 51 degrees, then that makes 102, so this must be 78 degrees. If that's 78 degrees, then we know the opposite angles in the parallelogram are equal, so those two must equal each other. And because we know that these are parallel lengths, because they're parallel sides or parallel edges, then we know that these two angles here must add up to 180 degrees because co-interior angles add to 180. So we can see that 4x is plus 78 degrees must equal 180 degrees. Co-interior angles add to 180. So therefore we know that 4x is going to be equal to, well, if we take away the 78, then we're left with 102 degrees, and then we can divide by 4, and that tells me that x must be worth 25.5 degrees. Okay, so that's how that question could have been answered. Lots of different ways of doing it, but that would be one way. Okay, so this next question talks about some information. As always with tables, try and get to understand the context just in case it's a comparison question. We can see here that there's some information about times taken for 40 people to fill in a form. Okay, so it's taken 3 people between 0 and 5 minutes to fill the form in, etc. In which class interval is the median? Well, we know that means the middle item when all the data's in order. Well, because this is in size order, going up in number of minutes, then we recognise this. So to do that question, it's useful to do the cumulative frequency, so we can find where the middle person is. So 3, 12, 23, 40. And we know that the middle person is going to come from the sum of f's plus 1 all halved. So we've got 40 plus 1 all halved, which gives us 20.5. So we need the 20th and the 21st person. So we need those two people to find the 20.5 person for the median position, and we can see that the 20th and the 21st are both in here, because in here are the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, all the way up to the 23rd person. So the answer for this question would be 10, 15. There would be an answer line, but I've just taken this question from an exam paper and adapted it. Okay, so this next question says estimate the mean average time, and when we see the words estimate the mean average, then we should be thinking of a formula. So the sum of f's, midpoint times frequency, sorry, the sum of mf's divide by the sum of f's, and that basically means that we need to find the midpoint, so we kind of add an extra column on and call that the midpoint. And it's the midpoint of the interval, so for this particular interval it will be 2.5, for this one 7.5, for this one 12.5, and for this one 17.5. And then we add on to the end here the midpoint times frequency column, and basically what we'll get down here is the sum of the midpoints times the frequencies, and here we'll have the sum of the frequencies, which we already know is 40 because the question is about 40 people filling a form in. So here then we've got to do the midpoint times the frequency, so 7.5, and then we've got to do the midpoint times the frequency, 63, 4.5, 67.5, and then we've got to do 12.5 times 11. It was on a calculator paper, this question, so we will use the calculator. So 12.5 times 11, so 137.5, and then we've got 17.5 times 17. So 297.5. We then add up all of those, so we've got 297.5 plus 137.5 plus 67.5 plus 7.5, and done. So 510. Okay, so to do the answer then, we need to do the sum of the midpoint times the frequencies, which was 510 minutes. Always useful to remember the units for this. And the number of people was 40. Useful to do the units, so if you get a compare question, then at least you know what the units are about, and then you can compare like with like. So 510 divided by 40 equals, so 12.75 minutes per person. Okay, so that was a reminder about how to calculate some averages from a grouped frequency table. Okay, so this next question talks about vectors, and we're having to do a bit of proof here, and it wants us to show that if ABCDE is a pentagon, show that BCDE is a parallelogram. Okay, so we recognise the properties of a parallelogram from the what do we know is we need to show that those two are parallel, we need to show that those two are parallel, and we need to show that that length is equal to that length, and that length is equal to that length. Okay, so we've got the length of, let's get this parallelogram sorted, so it goes B, C, D, E. Right, so we already know that DE is A take away 3B. We can work out what BE is, because we've got the resultant here, then we can work out that that must have been that journey to that journey, so that must be A plus 2B. Okay, so we know that for definite. So what we need to do then is we need to show what DC is and what BC is. Well, DC, we've got a resultant going on here, so DC we can work out by doing CE plus ED, and DC, CE is going against the arrow, so that means we reverse these signs, so we end up doing 2A take away B, and then we're going against ED, so again we reverse these signs, so that becomes plus 3B take away A, and then we've got 2A's take away an A, which is A, and we've got 3B's take away a B, which is 2B. Therefore BE equals CD. Okay, I said DC, didn't I? I should have said CD really, because I started at C and ended at D. So that should have been CD. Okay, so BE does equal CD. They're a multiple of the same vector, therefore they must be the same length. So same length and parallel. Okay, so that's the first bit done. So now we just need to sort out, well, this one's going in that direction, so we'll do CB. So we just need to sort out CB. So to get from C to B, I can go along CE, and then I can go along EB. Okay, so CE is going against the arrow, so I'll reverse those signs again. So we end up with 2A's, take away B. EB is going against the arrow, so reverse those signs. So that's going to be take away 2B, take away A. Okay, and then when we add those together, then we end up with 2A's, take away an A, which is an A. And we end up with negative B, take away 2B is negative 3B. Therefore, CB equals DE. So they must have the same length and parallel. Therefore, BCDE is a parallelogram. Okay, so we showed that the opposite lengths are the same and parallel. We showed that these two sides are the same and parallel, same vectors, therefore it must be a parallelogram. Okay, so that was that one. Alright, so we've got a football game going on and we've got some ratios here, and they're telling us that there's 4,152 more men than women. Okay, so with all ratios, useful to do the heading so we can see what we're talking about. Lots of different ways of doing this, guys, but I tend to think of this as the whole ratios in the ratio, so it can be turned into fractions. So there's 1825, so 13/25 of the people at the game were men, 5/25 were women, and 7/25 were children. Okay, so we can see here that there was 8/25 more men than women, and because they said there was 4,152 more men, then I know that 8/25 is equivalent to 4,152, so 1/25 is equivalent to 4,152 divided by 8, and 7/25 must be equal to 4,152 divided by 8 times 7. So it's a calculator question, so go for my calculator paper. So we've got 4,152 divided by 7, divide by 8, divide by 8, and then times that answer by 7. Okay, so the answer is 3,633. So 3,633 children. Okay, so again, there's lots of ways of doing this. You could simply have said that there was 8 parts more for men, and therefore this was equivalent to 8 parts. Work out what one part was, and then times it by 7. Fractions sometimes helps you see what's going on with the whole scenario. It's really up to you guys, as long as you end up with 3,633. It doesn't matter which method you go for. Okay, so we've got a solve question where we have to solve this equation. It's on a calculator paper. It says give you solutions to 2 decimal places, so it's not going to be a factorised question. This is either going to be quicker to do by completing the square or using the formula. It looks like it's going to be a quadratic because again they're talking about solutions to 2 decimal places, and it was a last question on the exam paper, so it probably would be a little bit harder than just a linear one. Okay, so let's go for it then. So we've got some fractions, so we need a common denominator, so we can get that by just multiplying those two together. As always, when you're dealing with 2 terms or more in expressions, then put brackets around them so you can see what you're doing. And we can see that we have to multiply the first fraction by x plus 2 over x plus 2, and multiply the second fraction by 4 over 4. And in doing that, we end up with a common denominator of 4 bracket x plus 2. Okay, so I'll lose that for a second. That's going to be equal to 1, of course. So we're basically going to go through and multiply all this out. So we end up with x squared plus 2x's, take away 8x's, all over 4x's plus 8. That equals 1. And we've now got a classic scenario that we have a denominator here to bring across by timesing, and then we've got a quadratic because of the power 2. We rearrange this to make it equal to 0 if we want to see if it factorises, or we recognise that this might be easier by completing the square, to see what happens when we do the multiplication across. So we're going to times that across, so we end up with x squared plus 2x minus 8x equals 4x plus 8. 4x times 1, 4x 8 times 1 8. I'm going to bring everything across to this side so we can get the quadratic neatly together. So we take away the 4x's, so we've got 2x's, take away 12x's, which makes negative 10x's, and that equals 8. I can see here we've got quite a nice little quadratic expression, so I'm going to use completing the square as the method to solve this rather than the formula, but could use either as long as you end up with the same answers, it doesn't matter. So complete the square on this, I end up with x, take away 5 because we halve the coefficient of x. We then square that and take it away, so negative 5 squared is 25, so we then take that away, and that equals 8. We then add 25 to both sides, so we end up with x take away 5 all squared equals 33. We then square root. So we end up with x take away 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 33. Must be really careful here, guys. When we're square rooting in solving equations, we must remember that there's two possible answers, the positive and the negative. And then we add 5 to both sides, so we end up with x is equal to 5 plus or minus the root of 33. So this will give us our two solutions. The question says give the answer to 2 decimal places, so we basically need to now go through with our calculator. So we have 5 plus the root of 33. Oops, wrong place. So 5 plus second function. I've gone for the wrong root, that's why. So 5 plus second function 33. Enter. And we want to change that into an answer, so 10.74. So we've got 10.74 or x equals, because we can do the negative, so 5 take away second function root 33 equals, change that, so negative 0.74. Okay, so those are the answers then, guys. So we saw there then that solve meant we make a common denominator, we then multiplied across to give us a single line equation, and then we rearranged this. Didn't go to 0 because it said the answer was 2 decimal places, so it wasn't going to be a factorising solution. I used completing the square because it's just quicker and easier when you've got a nice expression like this. You could use a formula, doesn't really matter, as long as you end up with those as your answers. Okay guys, so good luck in your practice as always, and getting closer. We'll see you in a week's time.